Chapter 3. A hand on his arm brought Madrigan awake. He could sleep long and deep while still being aware. So long as a part of his mind remained aware, it would watch his surroundings while he rested. While he could give nightmare-free rest to himself, he hadn't learned to share that with other people. "We're almost at Waldjik 6, Geffen said, taking his hand back. "I'll be in the cockpit." "You could wait for me," Madrigan said, but Geffen was already gone from their quarters. He shook his head but smiled. Geffen's impatience was nothing new. He tugged on his boots, having otherwise slept fully dressed. Patting his thin hair into place, he hurried to the cockpit. Most of the crew was awake. They waved or called out as he passed. "No one on Waldjik 6 will arrest us, right?" asked Wolf. Before Geffen broke them out of prison, they'd been serving 3 life sentences. The neutral and gray police would love to get them behind bars again. "Don't worry, we'll be fine," Madrigan gave them a quick smile. Only Geffen and Bakagan were in the cockpit when Madrigan arrived. Numbers counted down on the display, quickly approaching 0. When the numbers hit 0, Bakagan pulled a lever to drop them out of hyperspace. The lines outside the window crashed to a halt and turned into dots of light, stars scattered far away. This area of space had only been recently explored, the oldest settlements 300 years old. Many were far newer. At 150, Prekin was average for this area. As civilization expanded into this area, space stations came with. They provided stopping-off points, places to buy supplies, and a chance to contact the rest of the galaxy. There were 10 Waldjik stations, all built along the same lines. When exploration moved even further into the unknown regions, Waldjik 6 no longer functioned as it once did. Instead of pioneers and rebels and dreamers and scientists, it housed smugglers and ne'er-do-wells and other scum. It was the sort of place where the crew of the Otteran wouldn't stick out. It was also an excellent place to sell some of their treasure. Gems could easily be transported and sold anywhere, as they were hard to trace. Jewelry less so. If the crew wanted to turn the jewelry into money, they needed to find a seller, someone who didn't care about its origin. Geffen knew such a being, a man whose business spread across the 10 Waldjik stations and beyond. They had contacted him before hitting the treasury building on Prekin, and so the man should be waiting for them. A comm channel opened from the station when the Otteran exited hyperspace. "Registration and purpose of visit?" Bakagan leaned forward as he spoke, since some people had trouble understanding him. "This is the Otteran, here for business and pleasure. We plan to stay 2 or 3 standard days. You can bring a settle to the designated landing bay." A close-up of the station appeared on the display, a hangar on the near side marked, "Obey all station rules during your stay. You will be handed over to the Gray Interstellar Police. Have a nice day." "You too, asshole," Bakagan said after the comm channels shut down. Speak for emphasis. He glanced at Geffen. "You sure about this? We've got..." Geffen shook his head. "Not yet. When we go to Thlist, we go as the Orantarand. For now, we're the Otteran." Bakagan sighed as he maneuvered the ship into an orbit high over the station. "If you say so, boss. I like not being me." "Don't worry so much. Madrigan and I know what we're doing." When Bakagan didn't lose his grumpy expression, Geffen laughed and clapped him on the shoulder. Then he and Madrigan left the cockpit. 6 crew members waited near the shuttle. It wouldn't hold more than 10 people. "Remember to keep your weapons on stun mode," Geffen said as he, Madrigan, and the other 6 took their seats on the shuttle. "I don't want any trouble while we're on Waldjik 6. Well, no unexpected trouble." He grinned at that, winking at Madrigan. Custis hated Madrigan. One of the crew on the shuttle was Shorvin. He took the seat behind Madrigan's, leaning forward so that his breath tickled the back of Madrigan's neck. "I've got a contact here, boss. Can I meet her?" Even without his power, Madrigan didn't need to know what Shorvin meant by contact. The man's leer gave it away. "We're supposed to stay together," he said. Shorvin ignored him, never looking away from Geffen. "You can come too if you like. She's got business." "I doubt we'll have time for that," Geffen said. "Stick with us, Shorvin. If you leave, you know what will happen." Though Geffen had been the one to say the threat, Shorvin glared at Madrigan. Everyone knew who enforced Geffen's threat. It wasn't how Madrigan wanted to deal with the rest of the crew. Except for Shorvin, He didn't have to. He glared back at the man. Don't think I won't notice. I think you like to watch. Pervert. Jorvin sat back in his seat and stopped talking at least. Madrigan wanted to rub his brow to soothe away his headache. That would only trouble the other crew members. They got nervous when he reached for his head, no matter how banal the reason. He didn't need to touch his head to use his power. In Holosyn's, that was what actors did when pretending to be Saireishi. It didn't matter how many times Madrigan had explained this to others, they didn't believe it. He soon stopped trying to explain. He had better ways to spend his time than complaining over misrepresentation from the Holosyn industry. The trip from the Otteran to the station took only a few minutes. They berthed the shuttle in the indicated dock. Many other shuttles filled the bay, along with cruisers and a battered Varanus fighter. Madrigan let Geffen and the others go on ahead of him, which gave him a few moments to massage his temples. A small robot had been on the shuttle with them. Madrigan told it to watch the shuttle, but left the shelter otherwise unlocked. He always assumed that he might need to leave in a hurry. He then checked that his spare jewel was inside the refresher, lying in the middle. With that done, he walked quickly to catch up with the others. Jorvin noticed him coming from behind and smirked at him. The headache returned, and Madrigan fought not to grind his teeth. Gods, he hated that man. Geffen's contact wanted to meet in the bowels of the station. Though plenty of shady and outright illegal dealings went on at all Walgic stations, Geffen remained paranoid. After 3 prison sentences, all of which he had escaped from within a year or 3, Geffen worried about being caught. I know I've got you now, he told Madrigan whilst they planned, but I don't fancy going back. I won't be sent to a neutral prison if I'm caught again. It'll be a gray one, probably on Duresi. As they headed deeper into the station, Geffen called his contact. Immediately, Geffen said, stopping so fast that one of the other crew members almost walked into him. He was silent for a moment, listening. His scowl grew deeper. Yes, well, I appreciate your diligence. It saves me time. We're headed there now. Bye. They know we were coming, boss? Pulse said, snout twitching. A family walked past, and they glared at them. Geffen was paranoid, but Pulse suspected everyone, even children. A week ago, Madrigan offered to look into their mind, have a rummage round, and maybe fix some of their obvious issues, but Pulse refused. They refused nicely, since Madrigan and Geffen were the only people they trusted. Because Pulse trusted him, Madrigan couldn't fix them without permission. Until Pulse, he hadn't realized how frustrating that could be. He detected the Otteran the moment we came out of hyperspace. Between us. Geffen clenched his fists. I said we might have merchandise to discuss in a few days. Why in the hell has he been tracking me? Pulf gripped their blaster and grinned. You want us to take care of him? You've got other contacts. Geffen sighed. We can't attack him. That will attract attention we don't need for the station's security. Besides, attacking your suppliers is bad business. No, we can't attack him. As he said this, Geffen looked right at Madrigan, as if Madrigan needed such a pointed look to understand his meaning. I'll take care of it, Madrigan said. With a laugh, Pulf poked him in the side with their elbow. We're damn lucky to have you. How'd you become an unregistered Saireishi anyway? I thought that was impossible. Come on, I don't want to linger, Geffen said before Madrigan had to answer. The group picked up their pace, or as much as they could while in the marketplace. People were cluttered in here thick as they passed wilting fruit. Madrigan stared at that. Fresh produce cost far too much on space stations. He hadn't realized there was anyone rich enough to afford that on Walgic 6. He would have to pay closer attention, lest someone take him by surprise. He walked near the back of the group. Not at the very rear, because then people would assume he was one of Geffen's guards. When they met others, Madrigan played Geffen's accountant. A few months back, Madrigan met an accountant who knew some interesting loopholes. Thanks to what he learned from the man, without his knowledge, of course, Madrigan would never have to pay more than 0.1% tax again. He was still implementing the investment schemes, but he would never have to work again. Not that he had to work now. If Madrigan ever needed money, he found someone rich and twisted their mind. they happily transferred to him as much money as he wanted. He didn't take enough to ruin their lives, and he never did that to anyone who truly needed money. "You're a rogue for the poor," Geffen said the first time he saw Madrigan do that. "I can appreciate that. Want to put your talents to better use and really screw over the rich?" Geffen was his only friend, so Madrigan would have said yes regardless. Still, he liked the idea of being a crusader, of helping the galaxy to be a better place. As they walked through the marketplace, a few other people got close, and one young woman tried to pickpocket Pulf. Pulf grabbed her hand and twisted her wrist, nearly hard enough to break it. She ran off, whimpering. No one had any ill intentions towards them. Madrigan didn't have to listen very hard to pick up things like that. Cruelty was a song he knew far too well. Once past the last stall, they were able to walk easier. Madrigan felt eyes on them. He didn't look around. He didn't have to. His mind reached out, searching. Their observer wasn't there in person. That always made it harder. A lesser Cyrashi would have been stuck, but not Madrigan. He found the camera through which they were being watched and followed it. Like other Cyrashi, he couldn't reach computers or robots or anything manufactured. That wasn't how his power worked. But a person was aware of the device they used, where it was placed on their side, where it was on the other end, whether it was live, and so on. Madrigan didn't need much detail. So long as a person was vaguely aware, and most people were, that was enough for him to track them down. He found their observer many decks down in a small room. The overweight Chokhi gobbled down snacks as he watched the feed, mostly paying attention to Geffen. A second console ran a recognition program. That was bad. Everyone in the group, save for Madrigan, had a record. The computer would take seconds at most to finish its recognition program and then find the records. Since there was nothing Madrigan could do about the computer, he focused his attention on the Chokhi. The Chokhi was part of the tech side of the station's security. Watching the monitors comprised his entire job. Most people who had jobs like that found them boring, since most of the work was done by computant being just needed to be there to monitor it all. Madrigan sank into the Chokhi's mind and almost groaned aloud at what he found there. Over the years, he discovered any number of perversions while exploring mines. There had been one Parleni who liked to get too close to people to smell them. He was guarded once by Huck Fairing, who enjoyed nothing more than watching people get tortured. He had also met a human who fantasized about young children. With that man, Madrigan had found a way to expose his fantasies to the authorities. He had since been taken away to be reconditioned. Madrigan was proud of that. But with most people, he tried to ignore the desires he found in their minds. The Chokhi security tech loved his job, literally loved it. He wanted nothing more than to observe people from far away. He played with the various camera feeds, zooming in on certain people and certain parts of their anatomy. Some of the best feeds he saved to his jewel for later, for private perusal. At the moment, he was more focused on a Sifman woman than on Madrigan or his associates. However much he enjoyed his job, the pretty people wouldn't distract him from doing it correctly. He desperately didn't want to lose the job because he would then have to watch people in public, where he would be noticed and perhaps arrested. While the computer worked, Madrigan heightened the Chokhi's attention on the Sifman woman to give him more time. Once that was done, he slid lower in the man's mind. The unconscious, natural processes that the brain performed were the hardest to affect. No matter what the Holosyn said, most Cyrashi couldn't kill a person by stopping their heart or their brain. Maybe if they stood close to their victim, but even then, only the most powerful and skilled Cyrashi could manage such a feat. Madrigan was that powerful and skilled, but the distance was too great. Anyway, he had no desire to kill the Chokhi. Once he reached the lowest depths of the Chokhi's mind, he reached for his hearing. When the computer finished its search, it would make an audible beep. The Chokhi didn't need to be hard of hearing for long, just a few seconds at exactly the right time. If he went any longer without hearing, he'd notice since his various feeds came with audio. And when he found a person he particularly enjoyed watching, he wanted to hear them too. Madrigan didn't notice where he was walking, trusting his comrades to keep him pointed in the right direction. All his attention centered on the chalky and the computer. The moment Geffen's name appeared on the monitor, Madrigan shut down the chalky's hearing. When the beep came a moment later, the chalky didn't notice. He was good at his job. Even if he hadn't noticed yet, he would check the security feeds soon. Madrigan couldn't control his mind for long. It was far too tiring and distracting. Archive it, he told the chalky, pressing the command deep into the man's mind. The chalky blinked, a handful of stacks halfway to his mouth, his attention still riveted by the Sithvin woman. She'd stopped to examine some items in the market, bending over to offer him an excellent angle. The chalky's hearing had returned, and he wanted to listen to the woman's conversation with the shopkeeper. He could manage the day's archive later, at the end of his shift, when he usually did it. Madrigan hated people with firm routines. They were always harder to move. Archive it, he said silently, pushing even harder. With a shake of his head, the chalky shoved the snacks into his mouth. Without looking away from the Sithvin woman and without pausing his chewing, he reached for the controls. He'd done this thousands of times before, so didn't need to look as he did it again. The footage for the last few hours got collected and saved, then archived in case it needed to be examined at a later time. It took 4 buttons to do all that. Finished, the chalky settled back in his chair for some more ogling. Feeling vaguely ill, Madrigan surfaced. The halls around him had changed at some point. When, he couldn't say. Before, they had walked through clean, crowded corridors. Now dirt covered everything. There weren't as many lights, and far fewer people trudged past, none of them willing to give the crew a smile or a hello. When the next person passed, Madrigan leaned closer to Geffen. Our identities have been archived, he whispered. Geffen gave a shallow nod. Good. Any other trouble? Not at the moment. How long before someone checks the archive? Madrigan shrugged. Depends on how long it takes for someone to chase us here. 2 standard days at most. Someone would follow them from Reckon. The dead bodies and the stolen treasure must have been discovered by now. That sort of crime couldn't be handled internally, since Reckon had only recently become a neutral world. As such, Reckon would have called someone to come investigate. Probably neutral police, but perhaps Grey instead or in addition. Madrigan would prefer a Grey operative for his plan, but neutral would still work. When the Otteran left Reckon, they registered their destination. Reckon could use their sensor logs to check the destination. The ship could easily drop out of hyperspace early and change destinations, or arrive at its destination for only a few seconds before making a second jump. Reckon would assume that the Otteran had done one of those things. Still, Waldjik 6 had been listed as their destination, so someone would come here to check. They gave their registration here as the Otteran, which was the same registration they used on Reckon. While some of the crew weren't listed on the official manifest, Geffen would be. That would be enough to get their pursuers' full attention. One of the first things that a person would do would be to check the station's security archives. They would then confirm Geffen's presence. Their pursuer would see Madrigan too, but that didn't matter. He wasn't registered as a Cyrashi, and he didn't have a criminal record. As far as most of the galaxy knew, he was a boring neutral who'd gone on his first criminal venture. They wouldn't pay much attention to him, not even when they found his jewel. He'd left his extra on the shuttle, and only an incompetent police officer would fail to find it. He only hoped they wouldn't have to wait for long. If they had to stay here for more than a day, their backups would start to fall apart. That was why Madrigan hoped for a Grey pursuer. They were far better trained than neutral ones. They had more influence during their pursuit as well, since no one wanted to get on the bad side of the Grey. When he thought about it, Madrigan felt bad about what would happen to the officers who found him here. They were a necessary loss. They wouldn't die or be injured. He and the rest of the crew couldn't afford that. Likely, this would be a blow to their career, having dangerous criminals in their grasp only to lose them. Madrigan and Geffen weren't common thieves or murderers. They were on a quest, a plot that would make the galaxy a better place. He hoped that, someday, the rest of the galaxy would understand. Perhaps the rest of the galaxy would even forgive him and the others. So long as the galaxy hated Hrekken and all the people there, that was all that mattered. If he had to, Madrigan would kill any number of people to ensure that happened. Hrekken would fall. He would guarantee it.